of new names. So what I would like to go ahead and start with are introductions. So Julia, I think you're new to the meeting, and I want to, hopefully I'm pronouncing it right, Tatiana. And we
Yeah,
can go
it's
ahead
right.
and turn on our cameras for a minute so we can all get introduced. All right, who wants to go first?
I can go quickly. So my name is Julia Lanou. I'm based in London. I work for Our Future Health, who is a large charity looking to do a large population cohort research study. And we have some questionnaire data that ideally we'd like to start converting into OMOP, but it's more of a long-term goal for us. So I'm here to listen in and just get a scope for the field.
Thank you. All right, and Tatiana?
Hi, my name is Tatiana. I'm a team member of vocabulary team of Odysseus Data Services. So today I'm with you.
Great. Well, thank you both for joining. One of our objectives for this year was to do a landscape assessment of what others have already done in survey work, so we can kind of not reinvent the wheel where there are things already in place that we can use or build on. And so we've had several talks, including from the Odysseus vocabulary team. And on our next meeting, I believe on the 19th, we'll have Vaclav from the UK Biobank talking about how they've done their survey week work. But I wanted to come back to the survey we wanted to do to get information from the community about what types of surveys they're using and any work that they have done with getting those surveys into OMOP. And so let me go ahead and share the agenda because I've got what we've left off, where we left off on the questionnaire. So hopefully you can see my screen. And yeah, so anyhow, what we've kind of outlined so far are, questions about, what's considered a survey. So, we want to make sure we're including things like instrument questionnaires, if it's an inventory assessment, a screening tool, all of those things we feel like we could include in this. And then details about the survey, details about how they've done data processing for it. And then sort of the area that we have not fleshed out yet, it just kind of lay triumphs and challenges. But I think we also want to put some questions around, what they used, what they felt like worked really well, but also some challenges or things that would have been helpful to have or they'd like to have in the future. So I think for many of you, you're new seeing this, so I don't know, we could go through all of it, or we can, start with fleshing out sort of this triumphs and challenges issue. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, if we have time today, is how we might want to give the survey. Like, so what kinds of tools and things, preferably something free, I don't know, like SurveyMonkey. We do have a survey tool that's part of Connect, but it has to be rendered through an app. And so I think that's probably more than what we want to do for this. And I think most of these do not require complex, skip logic and things like that. So I think some of the basic sort of free tier levels of some of these survey instruments would probably work well for us. So any thoughts on where you would like to start? I'm going to go ahead and turn off the camera since we're focusing on the page. And then hi, Monsi and Hayden, I see you've joined us. Okay, why don't we go ahead and do a review through the survey then? So Again, in addition to the seminars we're having, the goal is to get information about what kind of surveys the Odyssey community are working with. I think we want to make sure we're broad in terms of what we accept as a survey. We're asking for the name of the person, their institution, their country, what their role is on the project. So we're hoping that we will get people from multiple roles in working on survey data to fill this out, so we can kind of get different perspectives on what are some of the successes and challenges in working with survey data in OMOP. Then we're asking, and not necessarily in this order, probably goes better with details about the survey, but links to any documentation they have. So if they've done work in GitHub or code that they can share, things like that, then we want to know about that. Then some other details about the survey. So whether this is something they created or customized, or if they're using an existing tool, which you see a lot for things like screening tools, what level they're looking at. So we've had some discussion that some surveys are given at an anonymous level. There's no identifying individuals. So the analyses and results are being done at a population level as opposed to an individual level. If something is interview based, who does and administers the instrument? Um, if it's pre-existing, so this is where we might put in some skip logic. So if it's an existing tool, were modifications made? If they were able to work on mapping to OMOP, what version was it? How often was the survey reassessed, or what the cadence is? It's something they give every 2 years or 10 years or once in the study. An estimate how many responses they got, a link to information specifically about the survey, um, how they captured the survey. So it was an electronic survey paper, um, instruments like Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey, challenges if they were using proprietary software. Is the data they used public? What languages the survey was delivered in? Um, and then experience or satisfaction type surveys. I think that probably goes back up to what we're looking at in terms of the definition. Then we also wanted some details about data processing. So, actually, I'm going to pause there. Let's go back to these first two sections I kind of cruised for. Are there any comments or additions, things that you think might have been important that we left out of for the sort of general information section, or details about the survey?
Nicole, it looks great. A couple things come to mind. One is I, I wonder if some of these surveys will be in different phases of their life cycle. If if a survey is being assessed multiple times, sort of the reassessments cadence part, then that
Mm-hmm.
might influence things like, is the data public? How finalized some of those other components are. So maybe it could be informative to ask sort of where in their life cycle are they done with it, or are the data being analyzed? Are they still actively doing it? Things like that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The other thing that comes to mind is the challenges with proprietary software if used. I have two thoughts there. One, there can also be challenges with open source software,
True.
integration, configuration, things like that. So are we interested in sort of legal, administrative, purchasing integration challenges, or are we interested in technical challenges, or sort of does anyone on the team have the data science or the computer science skills needed to manage any of those?
Yeah, I think, and I would guess that we're less interested in the administrative than we are with the execution. And I'm just trying to find where we said that about, oh, here we go. So I'm just going to be challenges with software. Or I guess we could ask, is software open source or prior? I guess we probably ask a few things about the software. So, you know,
Sorry, Nicole, is this Monse, do you mean which software? The software
yeah,
to create a questionnaire or what
like used to administer it.
to administer? Because as you know, there are many pieces of
Yeah,
software.
that's true. So we could also
Some
ask
people will use a
about,
package, but if you use open source, you have different bits and pieces done by different pieces of code. So it might be, um,
yeah, we can make
yeah.
it plural.
So yeah, but that's why I like whether it's open source or is um, not open source. And then if it's a package, then they can just like, I don't know, Sorry Monkey or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's actually what's the name? I forgot. Of the questionnaire
Yeah,
software that a lot of people use. It might be also good to know which software they're
yeah.
using. Yeah.
Do that. And then we have questions about the data processing section separately. So I think we can, separate software sort of for analysis from software for delivering the survey where it was electronic, because I also imagine people are still dealing with analyses from paper surveys. Okay, so we can, yeah, and then,
Yeah.
and
So do you want to say, sorry to insist on that, but I think is that to develop and administer? Because it can be different to
yeah,
render the software versus to develop it.
yeah,
Sometimes it comes in one package, but it can be quite
okay.
distinct steps. Okay, thank you.
And then the second part, could you say that again, Jim, about what type of challenges?
In the technical or the administrative,
Yeah,
the
okay.
purchasing, the legal.
Do we want to know about administrative challenges?
I was thinking the same thing. What relevance does that have?
Yeah.
I mentioned it. What does it have for OMOP or harmonization?
All right.
No, I think the comment was more an example of the challenges can mean different things based on, as Matthew was saying, which different pieces one was using. I think for OMOP, maybe the more relevant issue is if someone is using a survey platform, is it flexible and configurable enough for what we're talking about here?
Mm-hmm. Maybe we could do something like, what were the pros and cons to this software you used? So we want to hear the good stuff too.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll wordsmith more later, but that might. All right. Anything else for this section? Okay, so let's go ahead and go down to the details about data processing. So what we have so far is how is the metadata stored and represented? What's the structure of the data? What database is used? Um, did they create extension tables or additional vocabulary or additional standardized vocabularies? So something outside of OMOP that's considered a standardized vocabulary. What were their use cases for mapping to OMOP? What tools were developed to map to OMOP? So, and this is just more of a note, but that the answers might differ by role. So that's why we're hoping to get members of the same, with different roles in the same team. And then I think something, oh, this is a little vague. Well, I guess some of it's all vague. But I guess summary scores, or maybe we're asking like, how do they deal with things that are a score or a score calculation? So I know a lot of, especially assessments or scales have summary scores that are used as part of it. How does that work and how they do the data processing? So there any questions, comments, additions for this section?
Nicole, what do you mean by database? What do you want it to tell you?
I think basically how they're stored. So some, see whether they're using anything like Mongo or some other SQL database or
Okay, you may want to, because database can be many things. So maybe you want to give some examples the way you have,
okay.
like SQL. So if they are using a SQL, MySQL, that's what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say probably the need here is to understand the form that they're saving in, not necessarily maybe the types. That would be a lot of detail that really it doesn't matter for OMOP because we do so much for allowing people to use all different sorts of databases.
Yeah.
But what we need to know is, are they using a database, like a relational database? So MySQL, Postgres.
That was the one I couldn't remember. Thank you.
SQL Server. Are they using a NoSQL like Mongo or some of the others that aren't, they're not relational based. They store documents or something like that. Or are they using something else, maybe like a fill in the blank? There's a few different types of databases, but NoSQL, these like MongoDB and Redis are one type that's very common, and the relational is like another type that's really common. I don't know outside of that what people would be using. It'd be surprising to me if somebody was using a graph database to store survey data. But I'd love to understand what they're doing. But yeah.
Yeah, and some of that comes through in the structure. So, for example, JSON is a NoSQL data structure.
I imagine more than in other areas with OMOP, we will see more like NoSQL types of databases with survey data.
Okay, thank you, Hayden. Any oh, go ahead, Monse.
What do you want people to respond on use cases for mapping to a MOP? Is whether they've done it or whether they want to propose something or?
I guess what I was thinking about with that one is what was their use case? Like, what was their motivation to map, to do the work to map to OMOP? But I think we could certainly, and I guess I was thinking this more for the last section, but I think we could certainly ask them like, what other use cases do they have? Like, I definitely think we want to hear from them. What weren't they able to do? Or what, if we are developing tools or best practices, what things would they, I guess, what future use cases or from sort of the challenges, what things do they wish they had when they were doing this?
Sorry, I might have missed that at the beginning. So this is going to whom? People that have already done the mapping, and you
Yeah,
just
this
want to
is
know.
going, yeah, this is going out to the Odyssey community. So we'll talk about it at the
Oh,
community
people that have
call
already. Yeah.
and then distribute the link. And so, yeah, we're just, there's a lot of conversations about survey work in the forums, but I think that would be really hard to collate. Of course, not everybody posts their challenges and things in the forum. So the goal is to collect this information from the larger OMOP community to see who's already done what, trying to work with the survey data.
So not very familiar with the community, but that seems like it will take me quite a long time to go through all of that. So what is their motivation? Are we going to get any responses? Because that's
So,
quite a
I
lot of
mean,
information. And if that's the case, should we just have a much briefer? Because that's all we want to know. I'm worried. I don't know. What do you think is the likelihood that they will respond?
I think there's a pretty high likelihood.
Okay.
Yeah, just because I mean, most of OMOP is done based on volunteer work, and people are trying to move it further because it also benefits their own research. I can certainly talk to it, and of course, our working group is under the Common Data Model Working Group, which is run by Claire Blacketer, and they've also done some surveys specific to the work. So I can certainly get feedback from other leads in the community to see if this is too extensive. But surveying the community is something that's done fairly regularly.
Okay. Okay. No, it's great. And maybe
Yeah.
checking, as you said, with people, that might be good.
Yeah,
You
I
get a
think
good
it's a good idea
response.
to get feedback
Yeah.
because I'm sure there are things we could cut. Certainly anything would be optional. So if nobody wants to fill out like every detail, they don't have to. We'll take whatever information they're willing to share. But yeah, we can definitely share this back with some of the other leads and see what they think.
And what software are you going to use for your questionnaire and database?
Yeah. So
How are you going to deliver?
I'm thinking we're likely to need something that's not proprietary. I don't know about using Quest because you have to render it in an app. And I don't know that we want to build an app specifically to render this. And because there's not a whole lot of skip
Yeah,
logic and things involved, I think we could probably do it with,
Google
a
Forms.
free tier level of, something like SurveyMonkey. And Hayden,
Yeah.
there was another one you were recommending, I think, at a different call.
Yeah, it would require some development time, and I guess that would be kind of the major drawback of it is that it's something that would take. I mean, it's a Python package, so it would take somebody to actually write out the survey in Python,
Okay.
which is a little less friendly than the SurveyMonkey free tier kind of thing. There's not a lot of skips and logics. Now, the reason I would suggest is if there is a lot of modification that would need to be made, where really the only other solution might be something like Qualtrics, just because I've never been able to use Qualtrics outside of like an enterprise. I don't even know
Right. Yeah,
what the
I
licensing
don't
are
even
like.
think Qualtrics has a free tier level.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but yeah, I don't think they do. So, and I can also, as Connect itself is also invested in this, and so I can see if it's a big deal to just create a random like app specifically for rendering this survey, because the upside to that is, I was part of designing the back end for Quest, so I already know how the data will come out. It can go directly into Connect system and can get, we can store it and do the analyses uh, pretty readily. I'm just not sure what the lift is for the app. That's not something I would know how to do. So I would have to consult our DevOps team and see if they would have bandwidth to do that. Anyone else have any experience or suggestions with free tier levels or doing sort of these, I guess, ad hoc, for lack of a better word, surveys.
It'd be great if we could just use RedCap. The Odyssey qualifies for it, the license at least. I don't think we've ever done it, but I would have to go through the Columbia the coordinating center to some degree just to get the license. But RedCap is always great. Most people know. A lot of people know RedCap. So
Yeah, I have to admit, I don't have experience with it because we were building out our own system. But if anyone else has experience with it, yeah, I'm open to that option too.
Nicole, seems simple enough that something like Google Forms will do the job.
Oh,
I
that's
think
true. I didn't think
I
about
would
Google
just
Forms.
start there. Otherwise, I think, yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
think we
that's
should be
nice.
able to
It
do
puts
it.
things,
Yeah,
yeah, in a nice table.
but it seems pretty simple. Not, I
Yeah.
mean, just answering each question almost in a field. You want to give some options and some free text, but it seems pretty straightforward. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another thing. So what I'm thinking about, so after today, we don't meet again until the 19th, and that's when we'll have that club talk. In ideal land, I would love to get this into at least question form by the end of the month so that we can put it into something. But anywhere, and I'll share this out to our larger group as well, but any of these questions where you think we can put in, a Boolean option or a categorical option, and we have ways to populate that, I would much rather get that data than free text. So even things like, this could be these can be the options: existing or created, population or individual, anything we can come up where we can put in the categories. We can always allow a response of option, like other, but we will definitely be able to process this and get to some meaningful information much more quickly for anywhere we can put in a Boolean or a categorical response. So, I realize everybody's really busy, but if any time in the rest of the month you can look at this and see where we can put in some categories or Booleans, I think that would be really helpful. Okay, and so then we'll go ahead, unless there any more discussion about the data processing before basically we have any other, I guess, follow-up questions we want to ask them. Okay, so what I was trying to think about at this end and kind of triumphs and challenges was kind of getting, what worked really well and then what things didn't, what would they like if they had to do this again, or what would they do differently? That's always nice to hear. So I guess I'll start writing some of these down, but any other thoughts on other questions we want to include? So any other things you can think of or modifications to what I've written?
Maybe as an extension to the what would you do differently if you had to do it again? It'd be interesting to know if they thought it was worthwhile, like if they were involved in more research studies within the OMOP community, or if they were able to expand the use case for that data after they did it.
Okay, so was the effort itself worthwhile? Some days I can spell. And have they expanded the use case since then?
Yeah, I guess, is there more data reuse for that survey once it was in OMOP?
Okay. Thanks, Julia. Anyone else?
Nicole, I wonder if more of our feedback could come once the questions are roughly structured. Maybe a few of us could give draft answers to this, and that could help address Monty's questions about how long would it take, how complex is it.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be helpful. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jim. I think that's definitely a helpful helpful thing. Because yeah, I agree. We don't want this to be overly burdensome. And it would be good to know. And it's always nice to include that in the ask, like we anticipate this will take you 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 5 minutes. Don't think it'll be 5, but hopefully it won't be more than 20.
Some places it is a legal requirement. Actually, I don't
Yeah,
know if that would apply because it's usually only it's like public facing. So do that.
right.
But I'm just thinking of sites where maybe this is delegated pretty heavily down or something.
Yeah, I've definitely seen those notices where there's like a notice of burden, like the anticipated burden of this survey. But yeah, I don't know that we would need to do that for this. Okay, any other thoughts before we sign off? All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining this morning. I'll clean up the notes a little bit. So Yuna's taken some notes too. And we'll include our thoughts about possible instruments and things in the minutes. And like I said, over the course of the month, it would be great to get feedback on what we can make categorical, things like that, with the goal of getting it written at the question level by the end of the month, and then hopefully into a survey instrument not too long after that. And I think once we've got it at the question level, we'll also share it out with some of the leads and get some feedback as to length and content for our purposes. All right, well, thanks again. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.